I don't want to be called like a data scientist. I almost take offense to it. And so I sometimes claim I do data mixed martial arts, which is a strange pun because like I do a discipline of things and I just pick and choose what I want to do to solve problems, right? And then ultimately using machine learning and statistical models and methods, I want to solve real problems, right? And if you don't really do that, then it's kind of pointless to me.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Data Scientist Show. Today, we have Max Pompella. Max has worn many hats in data science and machine learning. Currently, he's a freelance software engineer at any scale and a data science professor at IU International University of Applied Science. He has a PhD in mathematics from University of Hamburg. He has experience in various roles, including head of product research, deep learning researcher, head of data science, senior data scientist, and quant analyst. Max is an active open source contributor and maintainer. He's part of the deep learning 4J and Keras core developer teams, TensorFlow contributor, and HyperRock maintainer. He's also the author of the O'Reilly book, Learning Ray, Flexible Distributed Python for Machine Learning. If you haven't heard of Ray, ChatGPT is actually trained on Ray. And today we'll talk about how he designed his own career path in data science, reinforcement learning project he worked on, Ray for data scientists, and experience in remote work since 2016. If you like the show, subscribe to the channel, give me a 5-star review, and leave a comment. Welcome to the show, Max.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for having me.
So you have experiences as a data analyst and data scientist and engineer and researcher. At what point did you realize I'm interested in data science? Data science is for me after you finish your PhD.
Yeah. My first step after the PhD, that was when was it again? I think 2011, 12, kind of. I started with a prominent German bank, right, as an analyst. And at the time, of course, the kind of this notion of data scientist was already around, right? I mean, it was kind of popular at that point. But if you have a PhD in pure maths and you have no kind of job experience, it's kind of hard to break into these analytic fields, right? And so basically, like the only options you have are, at the time at least, it was kind of banking, insurance, and consulting, right? I didn't like the travel aspect of consulting, and insurance, like the mathematics behind insurance wasn't really interesting to me. So I basically tried myself out with like banking, and I just wanted to see how it goes, right? And I think in hindsight that was kind of a good move, but I didn't know before, right? But kind of what the banking industry has been doing with quants in the 80s and 90s is pretty much what we see as data science in other industries right now. So in a way, that was already like my first job in data science. I just didn't know yet in the beginning, right? And so at that point, it was already clear to me that I like this kind of quantitative science or developer work a lot, but I wanted to work in different industries, right? Banking wasn't really for me. Not just because I don't like to wear suits and ties, but also because like the industry as such didn't really fascinate me, right? So so after working for a big bank, I decided to go into like a smaller startup in the Hamburg startup scene, which was more about online marketing, right? And so there I did like I had like the first data science role. Yeah, which was kind of a good start, and it pretty much went from there. Yeah.
So, can you share a little bit of what is your first project as a data scientist?
Yeah, right. It kind of depends on what we consider as a kind of the first project, right? I would say like the first one outside of the bank. That already kind of shaped what I would do in the future as well, right? Because my first project in the smaller startup was totally different from the work I had to do in the bank, right? In the bank, you're just a really small cog in this big system, and people are just super happy if you just do analysis, right? But if you jump into a smaller startup, they're usually chronically busy and super understaffed, right? And so my first project was really to do like a kind of build out like a new system of how we evaluate ads basically that came in, right? And so there was no one there to do the analytics, no one there to build out the software stack, and pretty much wrap everything together and do the project management as well, right? And so at this point, I already realized, and this stuck with me for kind of the next, I don't know, 5 to 8 years, that if I truly want to be productive as a data scientist, I have to get strong at writing software, right? Because otherwise, I would always have to ask, the data engineers on staff or the software engineering departments that were adjacent, could you please help me in the next sprint or something like that? And that was extremely frustrating for me, let's say, right? Because I want to move fast and I have a couple of good ideas in this project, but I can't get them really to work out, right? So that was kind of one thing I realized, and from that point on, basically, I tried to lean more into this kind of engineering role to basically suit my own needs, right? I kind of wanted to become like a Swiss Army knife of data science in a way, right? So of course you can't do it all, that's pretty clear. But you always have a choice between, I don't know, becoming like a specialist in a certain discipline, or being more of a generalist, if you will, right? And I mean, I wouldn't say I'm a generalist, right? But it's just a different way of looking at a career, right? So I think I don't. At this point, it's pretty clear that I don't want to double down on any specific role, and dive quite deeply. Rather, I just want to be good at so many things that I can't be avoided, basically, right? I mean, I'm always useful in the team. And that's cool to me because I can always learn and expand my knowledge and work on something that's interesting, right? So,
yeah, thanks for sharing that. So, when you decided to learn more engineering skills, how did you approach that? Did you learn from work? Did you take some courses?
Yeah, so I'm pretty much self-taught, like from the beginning, but I try to talk to the adjacent departments always, right? So I basically went to lunch with all the engineers from other groups, and just wanted to be involved in their kind of sprint planning and what they were up to. I wanted to speak the language, learn their language, and slowly but surely kind of picked all of that up. Right. And then also kind of at the same time, like I said in the beginning, I was basically making my first moves in open source, like contributing to GitHub. And then of course you also learn kind of the ropes there, right? So you need to understand how to open pull requests, et cetera, right? All of this project management stuff, which is kind of interesting because it mirrors how things work in companies as well, of course, right? This is what GitHub has been developed for, like a collaboration of scientists, computer scientists, or data scientists alike. And and to be honest, like this whole open source journey also got me later my first remote job, and I haven't looked back since then, right? I mean, basically, like even before that, I've been working on GitHub on various data science or engineering projects. And I'm now doing the same thing. I'm just communicating with a different group of people that doesn't happen to be in the same room with me, right? So that was kind of good preparation.
Yeah. So which open source project helped you get the first remote job?
Oh yeah, well, basically I started my open source journey, like I mentioned earlier, with Keras, right? So I contributed to Keras a lot. For a while, I was in the top 10 of contributors. It wasn't always as big as it is now, right? It also wasn't always part of TensorFlow, right? It has been like a standalone project for quite a while, and in the beginning, it was really easy to contribute to, and so I built a couple of interesting features there, and also libraries that sit on top of Keras. So, for instance, in 2015, I think also later that year, almost 2016. I built a library called LFS, which does basically distributed deep learning with Keras models on Spark, right? And if you know Spark a bit, it's great to distribute large scale data processing and so on, but it's slightly inflexible. At the very least, it was in 2015, right? I mean, nobody could do that really. So executing your custom Keras models on a cluster and run this against data that you have in a Spark data frame or a DD or something like that. That was kind of a new thing to do. And so basically I built out this project, LFS on GitHub, and it attracted a bit of a fan base, I'd say, like was kind of semi popular at the time. It's not as relevant anymore, of course, right? There's other tools that can do this much better, like Ray. So it's simply not needed anymore, but just to have this kind of idea of starting with like a single Python project and scaling it out to a cluster of computers, something like that, is something that has been with me for a while now, right? I mean, this is something like this intersection of cluster computing and machine learning has been with me since this project, pretty much, right? And after I created LPlus, so I got in touch with a couple of people from Silicon Valley on Twitter, right? And basically my first job in the States at SkyMind, the creators of the Deep Learning for J. Well, basically I reached out to them on Twitter. It's kind of a cool story to tell, right? So the founder basically pretty much bragged about another guy and how they basically attracted him through his open source work. And I pretty much tweeted back at him and said, all right, if you ever want to hire me for my open source stuff, I'm here, right? And basically 2 months later we had a contract, and yeah. So basically, yeah, that's how I got my job in the Valley, right? And yeah, so I've been around since then.
Mm-hmm. So you used Twitter to find your job, and you also has a open source project that showcase your capability in this domain. I think that's a really cool story. So what made you want to join Anyscale later?
All right, yeah, just one more stop basically that I should mention, right? So after I joined SkyMind and worked on Deep Learning for J, there were some problems between the co-founders basically, and the organization split. And so basically I joined a new company that spun off SkyMind, which is called Pathmind, right? And with Pathmind, I did some interesting reinforcement learning projects, but Pathmind had to close shop in late 2021. And then basically at that point in time, I already signed the contract with O'Reilly for the new book, right? So, and Pathmind has been a power user of Ray since the early phases, right? So I have been in touch with the crew from Anyscale anyway, right? So there were a couple of people who I was basically regularly talking, either on Slack or on GitHub, and pretty much it made sense to just move over, right? I mean, I had like connections, I had GitHub, Slack, I wrote the book, and basically I just got in touch with the Anyscale folks, and we arranged something, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And for folks who never heard of Ray, can you tell us what is Ray? What does it do?
Right. Okay, cool. Yeah. So Ray is an open source project that's used for distributed Python, if you will. We call it flexible distributed Python in the book, right? So it's the flexible distributed Python for machine learning. This is kind of the subtitle of my book. And this is pretty much what you can use it for, right? So Ray allows you to easily scale kind of your local computations to a whole cluster of machines, right? So, and if you have something that you want to execute locally, you can easily parallelize that as well, right? So in Python, you have sometimes problems with the global interpreter lock. So Python is essentially single-threaded, and sometimes you cannot even parallelize the most simple things. And instead of using tools that are too complicated, Ray has a couple of really simple primitives that allows you to easily just scale out your code, even just on your laptop, right? So you can definitely speed up certain computations just on your computer. And then with just a few lines or just one line in many cases of code changes, you can scale out your whole computation on a compute cluster, right? So let's say you have a data science experiment locally and you want to do some data processing on a sample of data, and then you run a training on your GPU that you might have locally, or you just have a CPU and you want to see if it just works, if there's some throughput. And then you can use Ray to kind of configure the scale out parameters, if you will, and do kind of large scale processing on a bunch of CPUs and do the model training on a bunch of GPUs. And you can basically independently scale all of these things while still just working with one Python script. Right.
Yeah.
And so ideally, it kind of feels like you're still working locally, but you're just configuring like the scale out parameters a little bit, set your cluster URL basically, and then you're good to go. So it's kind of a great tool to scale all sorts of data science workloads for sure. And it's also kind of more generally, it's also kind of a distributed compute framework for all your Python programs, right? So it's not necessarily just usable for data science, although, machine learning workflows are really interesting to everyone right now. But even if you don't have anything machine learning related, or just something that's adjacent to machine learning, right?
Yeah. And so who are using Ray today? Are they mostly open source users, people doing their own projects, or like previously mentioned, OpenAI? What are some other companies or use cases you can share?
Uber works with Ray, Spotify, Shopify, and Instacart as well. And so there's a couple of really big names that are associated with Ray in open source, right? And like you mentioned in the beginning or just now as well, it is known that OpenAI used Ray to scale their computation for ChatGPT and like the other products.
Yeah. And previously you worked on reinforcement learning. So I know Ray also has a strong reinforcement learning capacity. So are you a user or contributor for the reinforcement learning library?
So the reinforcement learning library of Ray is called RLlib. So reinforcement learning library lib. And so that's a project I definitely contributed to a lot. So Ray is a popular open source project for sure, but like a couple of years back, of course, it was not as popular as it is now. And so I think I started really early with that. Like I think I used pretty much every single one of their open source libraries there, right? So RayTune for hyperparameter tuning was something we always did at PathMind, right? The job I had before doing reinforcement learning, because you also have to tune your reinforcement learning experiments, of course. We used RLlib a lot for reinforcement learning, and then once the models got fully trained, our customers also wanted to deploy models, so we also used RayServe a lot.
And going back to your previous experience working on reinforcement learning, so what the problem you're trying to solve?
Mm-hmm. So like the problem we tried to solve, for instance, at PathMind, very broadly speaking, was to kind of connect customers that had really industrial simulation software, right? So we were working with tools like AnyLogic, for instance, which is like a commercial grade simulation software, and we tried to basically connect these customers and use cases to the world of reinforcement learning, right? And so basically, AnyLogic has no native way to talk to Python, right? And also like simulations as such use completely different primitives, right? So if you, for instance, to give you a concrete use case that we worked on, so there was like a little factory grid that you can imagine to be like a bit of a 15 puzzle. I don't know if you know these, like these 4x4 puzzles in which one piece is missing. You basically have to move around things to bring things in order. So it's a very difficult I don't know, rearrangement problem, right? To do that.
Mhm.
And so we had this company as a customer in Italy that was basically trying to move around these big blocks of objects in a factory in a very abstract way, and they just didn't know how to do this optimally, right? And so, of course, you can do things like linear optimization or something like that. But the problem kind of remains: you need to have the right people to tackle the problem. And if you have a general suite of kind of methodologies or algorithms that learn by themselves and can solve your problems like that, then that's better, right? So you don't want to go in and handcraft things like that. So basically, we try to put reinforcement learning on top of problems like that, yeah. And that was kind of fascinating because it had like a very very interesting technical component, right? Because we had to connect the simulation software, which was primarily written in Java, right? So you could extend kind of Java classes. That has nothing to do with Python, right? So basically, we used a project called Java CPP to connect the Java to C++ and have like a common interface that looked like OpenAI Gym, right? Like the Gym environment that you know from reinforcement learning. And then basically, if and when you're in the world of C++, you can create wrappers into Python, and then seamlessly, basically without any delay, communicate back and forth between Java and Python processes, if you will, right? So basically, we hook into this JVM of the simulation software and run the simulation so that it connects to a Python reinforcement learning project, right? And so for the reinforcement learning part, we were using RLit, and to scale out everything, we were using Ray to do that on the cluster, right? Because our customers wanted to create a lot of experiment, and they wanted to see if they could achieve some quick validation, if, for instance, like a certain reward worked or didn't. And so we needed to have this ability to scale out really quickly, right? And just building this adapter was kind of fascinating because we basically opened up new ways of interacting with your simulation world, right? And optimizing your factory grid to stay in the example that was previously completely untapped, right? And so that was pretty cool. And for the most part, for many projects, it worked, right? At the beginning, of course, we had to learn kind of how things worked. So we had to really understand like the customer's problems better, and get better at what we offer in the product to make their reinforcement learning runs, which ultimately was kind of a self-servicing platform, right? Believe it or not, like successful, right? And so working on that was kind of great, right? Because I got to see this really interesting tech stack, but then also work on customer projects and solve some of these projects for them. And was just all around quite fun to build out this product. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what was it like working with customers? And sometimes they want different features. So how do you, for example, prioritize customers' needs, and then also what customer wants might not always be possible to build, and how do you navigate this type of iteration with the customer?
That's a super interesting question, and of course, it's very difficult in practice, right? Because sometimes you have to anticipate needs, and also what the customer asks you for. What he wants is not always what he needs, right? So you have to drill down really deeply into requirements engineering and see what's up really. What does the customer really mean by that request? So do they really want this kind of obscure feature, or do we just want to go a step back and solve something else so that the problem doesn't arise in the first place? And so basically, me being kind of product research, I basically did kind of these sorts of experimentations, right? So kind of talking to customers, see how we can build like quick prototypes and improvements that might work, and do some validation runs, get feedback really quickly. And I think this is really key, right? Talking to customers and getting feedback closing the feedback loop. If you don't do that, you basically fly blind, right? And so basically we did this kind of a lot, and some of the features stuck, and some others didn't, right? And so in the beginning we wanted to expose much more to the customer. Like I think we wanted to basically have like a lightweight graphical user interface in which our customers could basically kind of configure everything that we do in the backend, right? So like everything that RLib and Ray have to offer, you can in principle expose to a user interface, right, without ever touching Python. But then it turns out, of course, like it's not a big surprise that customers really want an easy mode, right? So they don't necessarily want to configure all of that themselves, but they rather want to have something that just works, right? Or at the very least, give them something that they have domain knowledge and expertise in, right? And so basically what we ended up with is that we didn't tweak like the underlying reinforcement learning algorithms as much as we planned to in the beginning, right? So like RLib has like a huge bunch of algorithms that you could choose from for different use cases. Wow. But like as a default, we always resorted to PPO, right? Which is also by OpenAI, and it's used by ChatGPT as well for the reinforcement learning from human feedback, right? So this is a very good and solid algorithm that you can use in many cases, right? Not every time, but it just worked most cases, right? And what we ended up doing more. And this is kind of interesting because you don't see that many companies working in reinforcement learning in the practice out there, right? But what we ended up doing is kind of the equivalent of what you do in supervised learning to improve your models, right? So data quality and labeling, it was pretty much the same thing for us, right? So we improved kind of the simulation and how it was crafted so that the observations for the reinforcement learning algorithm were suitable, right? So sometimes you have partially observable states in your environment, and so you have to deal with that, right? So sometimes not all information is available. You have to kind of treat that in the right way and formulate things in the right way. Maybe normalize some of these states, and then also kind of the big one, like the 800-pound gorilla is the rewards, right? And I feel like this is something that isn't talked about enough in general. I think it's really difficult to find good reward functions, right? So yeah. we kind of call this reward crafting at some point, which I think is kind of suitable because you have sometimes, depending on the problem, you have very sparse rewards, right? So you really have to make the most of it and apply some tricks and some practical knowledge that you gain from other customers. You might have some suspicions on what might work and what the algorithm might look for. And so we learned a lot from that, really.
Yeah. I remember when I worked at Amazon's experimentation platform, we were trying to implement a multi-arm bandit solution for a customer. And even with A/B testing, you can track so many metrics. There are very few that would converge. And when you do I like you call it reward crafting. Sometimes when you craft the reward, you also change the thing you're trying to optimize. You're changing the business metrics a little bit. So I'm curious, can you share, do you have some steps, some frameworks you use when you try to craft the reward?
Oh yeah, like one thing you mentioned is really true. Like the reward you craft basically reflects kind of the business needs, right? So like observations, actions, and all of that are just the groundwork. But reward really reflects what the customer wants, right? And so it's of course it's kind of sometimes a bag of tricks, if you will, but it's also often just finding out and consulting with the customer to figure out what they really want. Like should two terms be equally balanced even as the algorithm progresses, right? So sometimes you have like additive terms in your reward function. Let's say you have 4 different terms, and in the beginning they're equal, but as the parameters of the model progress, you might have some kind of balance shift over time, because like there's a complicated formula behind that, right? Based on the model parameters, basically. And sometimes you want to kind of recalibrate that so that each of these terms are on equal footing, even down the line, right? So this is something that made a lot of intuitive sense to the customer. I'm still not entirely sure if it's mathematically sound, but it but it worked, right? So because you're kind of dynamically changing the optimization targets as you go, but this kind of recalibration and renormalization, this is something that just worked, and it clicked with the customers, because you could basically say, all right, I want to give like 30% weight to this term, and this is important to me. So this was just something that, while in theory it might not be the optimal thing to do, it was something that that our customers really appreciated, right?
Yeah. So a lot of times when we try to find different metrics when we work on project, we have a lot of assumptions ourselves. I think it's always good to have those discussions with our customers. So maybe in your mind, the two things that are the same are different for them, or vice versa. Also, a lot of times, especially when we're facing innovative project, for example, this one, probably nobody was working on the exact same problem, and you don't have a lot of blogs or literature to read, and a lot of data scientists feel not confident in their solutions. Oh, like you mentioned, what if there's no like mathematical or theoretical support? And in reality, what really matters is, does it provide the business value? Does it work? You can always experiment and test it. If it works, it works. There's no perfect solution to any data science problem. I think for one data science problem, a different person work on it using different tools can have completely different type of results. I think sometimes we need to think about the end goal, not focusing too much on mathematically how it works, or
Yeah, sure. I completely agree. Like, you certainly have to come in with a certain business sense, if you will, right? And if you look at this age-old definition of what data science is, like this Venn diagram of, I don't know, like the intersection of mathematics, coding, and business. Yeah. Let's not forget the business part. And I would actually argue that this is something that more engineers should also incorporate into their stack, right? More and more. Like if you're a pure engineer and you want to be successful in machine learning, you need to know the mathematics as well, right? So even if you see yourself as an engineer, at least you have to have some practical knowledge. And if you truly want to have an impact, then you also need some business knowledge, right? And there you go. There you have this kind of trinity again, just from a different, slightly different perspective, right? And I think I mentioned this earlier when we talked. I feel like this intersection of several disciplines is always worth achieving and aiming for, right? And it doesn't matter if you see yourself as a data scientist or an engineer. Especially if you're out to create some actual products, right? So it's of course different if you're like a data scientist in the actual sense. So you're doing science for the sake of science, not to build a product, right? Then it might be different. But I wholeheartedly agree with you. I would even claim that like if you have some product sense and you have a good MVP that makes sense for your customer and you can iterate quickly, it almost doesn't matter. Like as long as you have a good baseline, you will progress, right? And on the contrary, if you have like the fanciest model out there, that might look impressive to you, but if it doesn't outperform like the baseline by a lot, and the customer isn't happy because it's so slow or something like that, it has no meaning, right?
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes customer can help you provide some guidance on how to improve your performance. So maybe the customer say, oh, actually, I don't need a good model for all my customer. I only need a segment. If it performs well on that, and if that's my priority, and then that also help you focus on the important part of your solution. Right. I also really like one part you wrote in the first chapter of the Learning Rate book. I think maybe that's one of the reasons I wanted to reach out to you. You talk about the data scientist role. You wrote something about the data scientist title is a little bit of misleading. Can you share more with our audience?
Yeah, of course, of course. I have to say though that like this part of the book has been retracted. I often when I write books, like in my early drafts, I'm a bit more witty and creative, let's say, and then I bail out for the final draft. But yeah, so basically, like the idea I had in there was that data science is pretty much in the same way a misnomer as computer science is, right? And if you look back at this famous essay by Paul Graham, one of the co-creators of Y Combinator, right? He has this book titled after this essay called Hackers and Painters, right? In which he basically claims that hackers are not computer scientists, right? So basically hackers have a day job, but they actually like to do stuff, that with code that is not related to any job role there. And just in the same fashion that, there is not really computer science, right? It's kind of a bag of disciplines, right? And on the one hand, you basically have the mathematicians who prove theorems in computer science, right? Which might be the purest form of computer science to many. And then on the other hand, you have kind of very practical engineering disciplines. But in practice, the engineers don't really see themselves as computer scientists.
Yeah.
Right. So like where's the science? It's not actually what you're doing, right? You're dabbling. You're more like an artist, right? And so I see the same happening in data science, right? I mean, I think it's great to have this umbrella term, and it was very useful, especially like 10 years ago, to have like a new term for a new role. But I mean, everybody working in the field basically knows that there's a big segregation, and you have like a bunch of roles, like a portfolio of roles, if you will, and that's okay. I mean, it's still okay to have an umbrella term for that, but basically it spans everything from kind of a research scientist at DeepMind or OpenAI or so, which is basically what every data scientist secretly wants to be, but there's like 12 roles in the whole world. and then you have like a more on the different end of the spectrum, you have more like classical business intelligence, reporting engineers or something like that, working with Tableau. And there's a lot of stuff in the middle, right? And depending on how you look at it and who you include in your data science teams, you have data engineers, you have machine learning engineers, right? So there's a lot of engineering involved in that as well. And so basically my question is, if there's no really like good definition of what like the ideal data scientist is, or it breaks apart if you look at it, then maybe like the term has lived past its usefulness, right? I mean, I think it's still okay to have it around, but at the same time, yeah, it's a bit of a misnomer, right? Because to me, it's kind of the art and practice of building smart data products and gaining insight from data, right? And so, and if that is your definition, there's very little science, so to speak, in there. And if you accept my definition, which you don't have to, of course, then there's also no debate as to how data science is the same as statistics or something like that. Yeah. So sometimes you see these weird claims that I really truly don't get. So in a sense, yeah, I feel like data science is really the next evolution of how we build businesses with data in practice, right? Because it's truly not a standalone academic discipline to me, right? Because so there's nothing new that it adds as an academic discipline as compared to, let's say, statistics and machine learning.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So.
And I remember when I just started working, there wasn't a title called data scientist. My title was statistician/business intelligence. I think it's somewhat different. I worked on statistics to solve some problem, but there's also this engineering element to it. And previously, what was required for statistician is you were assigned some business problem, you give a recommendation, you give a presentation, and the business make some decision on top of that. But now I see it requires data scientists to bring this recommendation they have or some idea into a product. It could be a dashboard, it could be a machine learning model, it could be a piece of small software. So I would see there's more and more kind of need. There's a transition more to the software side because what was expected is not just you recommend the solution. You also need to scale the solution. You want to make sure your solution is adopted because I think in the beginning, the business would invest in a data science or research department when the economy is good, but then they realize, oh, I want to see some ROI from it. So maybe something you worked on doesn't have a large science or research component to it. I think that's totally normal as long as you deliver business value to it. Even if sometimes you feel, oh, this is a dashboard, but it's adopted by a lot of people, a lot of engineers or product managers make a decision out of it. I think that's a great data science project. You don't have to always do like machine learning, deep learning research, have those elements in your work.
Right, and of course, like if that's something that interests you, then of course by all means go out and build models and do like kind of the data science life cycle and the experimentation life cycle and do that. But basically, what I'm saying is that I just want to propose a different way of looking at it, and that. Yeah, well, that isn't really tied to a role in particular, but just a means of doing business in the modern world, basically, right? So, and I think that's that has helped me a lot, and also kind of evolve in the roles I had, because I don't want to be called like a data scientist. I almost take offense to it, and so I sometimes claim I do data mixed martial arts, which is a strange pun, because like I do a discipline of things. Yeah. And I just pick and choose what I want to do to solve problems, right? Ultimately, using machine learning and statistical models and methods, I want to solve real problems, right? And if you don't really do that, then it's kind of pointless to me. And I think like one aspect of modern data science and this whole tool stack that kind of validates this idea that I have is kind of this term of ML ops and data ops, right? Because you have to get your data from somewhere. You need to deploy your model somehow, right? And it's simply not enough nowadays in 2023 to just secretly develop like a cool model in secret, like in your data science department, like in an ivory tower with your mathematics friends. And then just throw over, the model to someone else, right? So I think it's quite clear that this isn't happening, and you don't really add any value to anything with that approach, right? And of course, I mean, having said that, like it is clear that there is value and there's merit to being a great mathematician and a great experimenter in practice as well, right? And so if you look at what OpenAI is doing with all the GPT series and ChatGPT, of course there's massive innovation, and it's really interesting and cool what they're doing, and their scientists are top notch, right? So I can't compete with them. That's not what I'm saying. But the point is, ChatGPT is at the same time an engineering project that's really genius, right? I mean, you could argue that Google could have done the same thing. Why didn't they? Right? And so like the difference is not in the mathematics; it's in the engineering and the execution and the business sense, right?
Yeah.
So like if you go on Twitter and see kind of statements about how bad ChatGPT is because there's no fundamental innovation or anything behind it. I mean, true, kind of, depending on how you look at it, but with the right view, I mean, it's like one of the most successful products that we've ever seen, and people want it, right? So definitely, it's genius as an engineering project at the very least,
Yeah, I agree with that. I think innovation can come in different ways. Maybe there's not innovation in the mathematical side, in the modeling side, but I think how would you package this model and scale it right? The engineering effort to it, and also how do you make it into a product. I think regardless of whether you are building a machine learning model or a dashboard, even just a presentation, eventually you're building a product that has users. How you present it, how you understand your users' need is eventually going to differentiate your product. I'm sure there could be 100 companies doing some similar AI product, but not everything has the adoption like GPT. So I think there's a lot for a data scientist to learn from there. And so kind of going back, as we mentioned, Chat GPT, I think it also made a lot of people interested in reinforcement learning. So what are some common mistakes you see people make in reinforcement learning?
I'm not sure if I can really talk to that. It's a very broad question. So I don't know what mistakes people generally make, but maybe I can go back to some of the Pathline cases that we discussed earlier, because that makes things more concrete, right? So, for instance, one thing that we've observed that helped our users a lot, which is not a technique that everybody uses and that every framework really exposes as an abstraction to you, is for instance action masking. That was something that helped our user base a lot, right? So what action masking is, basically it's a way to kind of tell the model or hard code like your action space. Let's say we're again in this kind of factory grid, that sometimes you cannot go up, right? Or sometimes if you go to the left, you break the machine or something like that. And you can basically artificially mask out these action. Yeah, so it's a parametric action space, more strictly speaking. And basically that was like a fantastic way to guide our customers to more quick convergence, right? Because if you don't do that, your algorithm basically has to learn to avoid these spots, right? And then you have to incorporate kind of or penalize wrong directions and stuff like that. And it takes longer because you have to gain the experiences, and depending on how fast your simulation is, it might be a costly endeavor, right? So that was really something that we benefited from a lot. And it's not a complicated idea or anything, but your reinforcement learning framework has to support it. And pretty much every single customer we had was benefiting from it, right? So that's kind of interesting to have. And then something else we did as well that turned out to be immensely useful in practice, that RLib also supports. And we were kind of depending on the RLib team and communicating with them on these kind of cutting edge features to be supported, right? If we had chosen like a different reinforcement learning library, we wouldn't have access to that, right? So it was kind of a lucky break there. And so the other thing we did quite often was curriculum learning, which is also kind of cool and an interesting technique in reinforcement learning that has been known for a long time, but I rarely see this in practice. But this is also something that worked extremely well for our industry partners, right? So, and curriculum learning is basically a way to grade the difficulty of your tasks, right? And so basically you can tell your reinforcement learning algorithm, and this is also an example that made it into our book. You can tell your algorithm which tasks are easier and start with those. And once it crushes the easier tasks, it can progress to more complicated ones, right? Again, like a super simple idea on paper, but since our customers were extremely familiar with the business cases, it was usually almost trivial for them to tell what's easy and what's difficult, right? So if you think back about this kind of 15 puzzle rearrangement thing in the factory, of course, like if you want to arrange something that's already close to its target, that's easy, right? It's not always that easy to judge, but yeah, of course, you can kind of come up with such handcrafted curricula that are immensely useful. Yeah, in practice, basically.
Yeah.
And so
Thank
as to, yeah, sure. When it comes to pitfalls, I'm not entirely sure what people do wrong, but yeah, I think like talking about such positive things might be better. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for sharing that. So, in the reinforcement learning project, you shared there's a lot of work with the customers, and you were the head of product research.
Mm.
So, what is product research, and how did you step into this role?
Yeah, I think that was pretty much imposed on me, I would say. Like, I started a bit in the beginning with Passmind after like these intricacies that arose with SkyMind, and so I helped out with a couple of proof of concepts, right? And it turned out that like the experience I gained with the customers working on these projects. Um, well, it turned out that my strengths are pretty much, seeing patterns in what these customers wanted, and kind of, I kind of wanted to step out and build some of the features into the product myself instead of doing kind of the same consulting thing again. Like so instead of doing like the data science project itself, the proof of concept MVP, basically anticipate customer needs and build kind of with the engineering team the product features ourselves. And so basically it's a kind of this role formed, and I think we kind of agreed on the role to have something on paper. But yeah, honestly, I'm not exactly here to kind of chase titles, right? So that's not the interesting part to me. I tried to let go over the past couple of years to basically look for titles, but rather kind of learning opportunities and what I can do to improve. But
Yeah.
I think in this case it really made sense, right? Because I think it was kind of a good means of communication also with the customers to basically bring me in and say, all right, this is the guy who builds experimental features for you, and we do this and that, and that worked out quite beautifully, right? So, for instance, towards the end, like in the last 6 months or so, we basically when kind of more and more customers were interested in the product, like yeah, we kind of ran out of runway, but towards the end, but we had more and more customers actually. So the product kind of worked, but yeah. So what we did towards the end with more successful customers, they were more and more interested in kind of deploying their products, right? So instead of only quote unquote doing the training part in our application, they also wanted to have kind of these intelligent agents coming out of training deployed so that people could use them, right? So basically, what we wanted to spill them back into kind of the simulation, and then ultimately into the actual factory, right? And this brings about like a different suite of problems that you might not anticipate in the beginning, right? I mean, for instance, like in this specific case, it was actually fascinating because like if you work in a purely digital space, you don't tend to think about these things, but sometimes we had customers in which their equipment basically did not have any internet connection, right? So you basically had to do some sort of embedded solution ultimately, and do things on device, right? Which we didn't. I mean, I don't want to act as if we really truly deployed something like that for a customer, but it was conceivable in the end, right? And it's kind of cool to see what people do out there in practice, right? And it's not always this kind of sterile. Everybody has fast internet and so on, but you might just be, I don't know, you have equipment that gets wet and it's not protected from sunlight, or like the sensors break down, and you don't have any internet connection and so on and so on. So that was quite interesting as well. And this is of course something you have to take into account as well from the beginning, right?
Yeah. It seems like before you step in this role, you already talk to customer a lot, contribute to product research. And after you get into this role, what are something you didn't know that you need to learn, or was there something kind of surprising for you? Any new lessons for you?
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of hard to tell, but of course you always learn a lot interacting with customers, right? I think I think one thing I took away is basically you have to be very careful about how you present certain views, right? So you have to be as unbiased as possible, right? To get like valid views, because it's very easy to kind of not purposefully, but to manipulate your partners into thinking what you think, right? And so basically have kind of suggestive questions that are difficult that's difficult to remove in hindsight, right? These kind of biases. So and also I learned that it's really kind of crucial to talk to customers often and yeah, very frequently and check in with them, right? It's really like the only way you can really learn to improve. Yeah, and this is something I try to take over to new roles as well. Like the only thing that kind of prevents me right now, which is a bit unfortunate to hop on any more calls, is basically I'm in the wrong time zone, right? So I'm still in Central Europe. The headquarters is of Anyscale is in San Francisco. There's a nine hours time difference. So basically, I cannot really you know, yeah, involve myself as much as I would like to, because of course, like the things I learned with the customers also have kind of a counterpart within the organization, right? I think what you talk with the customers about and how you integrate that and how you close that feedback loop is mirrored by what you do internally in product management, right?
Yeah.
And so you have to basically organize yourself and manage people accordingly so that you basically react in time, and the roadmaps of your engineers and data scientists basically reflect the customer needs, right? Without being too jumpy, right? You don't want to instantly react to anything that happens out there. So it's like a fine balance to strike, and sometimes, well, that's another lesson. Sometimes you have to make really like, yeah, I don't know, creative decisions, and also can kind of stick to your gut feeling sometimes, because sometimes you just don't have enough information to make the perfect decision. But you have to go with something and make a judgment call, have good hypotheses, and call it like that, right? So yeah, so there's no use in acting as if you know the truth already and you have the perfect view on your product. It's best to just iterate really quickly. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I agree with that. Sometimes if you feel you need to make a decision or you need to start a prototype model when you have 100% accurate data, it's often too late. You might discover a lot of issues with the model, find some challenges using a small part of your data to build a model. And then also when it comes to decision making, I think in Amazon, you can make decisions when you have, say, 70% of the data. And then we also talked about like two-way door. It doesn't have to be one way when you make a decision. If it doesn't work, you can revert back. I think having those systems set up is helpful for you to make decision quickly and not worried about breaking things. And then the first thing you mentioned, be objective with stakeholders and be honest, I think is also very important. A lot of times when we want to get a project moving, we feel invested in a project, we want to sell, we want to convince people. But I think it's important to separate, okay, what I observe, what is true, and what is my opinion. I think it's important for data scientists to have opinions, but also need to let stakeholders know what is the potential risk, what is the caveats. I think that's another way to earn trust from the customers as well.
True. Yeah, I agree with that. So being opinionated is also kind of underrated at the same time. Like it sounds paradoxical at first, but I feel like when it comes, for instance, to creating open source projects or so, like some of the best open source projects are really opinionated, right? If you look at Keras, it's being created by one guy, right? Who basically implemented his view of how things are supposed to be. And sometimes if you have too many cooks in a project, basically too many programmers, you can kind of dilute kind of the original message, if you will. And I think it's kind of crucial also to recognize that kind of building a product and building a company is also like a manifestation of being opinionated, right? I mean, your first product that you build, your MVP, is based on a belief that you have, right? So you should have kind of a strong opinion, but maybe it should be loosely held based on customer feedback. But still, you have to kind of start with something. And if you only basically hope for other people to solve your problems, right, and you basically make consensus decisions based on the average view of your customer, you build an average product, right? So it's kind of difficult to balance sometimes. And I think the same is true for data science projects as well. Like it applies to on many levels, I think.
Yeah. So how do you balance this? How do you take customers' feedback, or sometimes you might have a strong opinion, you think this might be useful for a customer? How do you kind of balance, have a strong opinion, kind of quote unquote sell your opinion versus listen to the customer?
Yeah. So yeah, like I said, it is a balance, and this balancing act is difficult, right? It's and like if this was easy, like everybody would just follow like a recipe. But yeah, I think it kind of depends, of course, on what you're doing. But so I think you always start with listening to what the market tells you and what your customer is telling you, and then you try to kind of come up with like a good story behind that, and basically, I don't know, maybe also make create some ideas around what might have the most impact, and can we maybe apply some sort of Pareto principle, like cut off, I don't know, 20% of the customer base, like, or let's say 80% of the customer base, because like 80% of the revenue comes from 20% of the customers who have a very restricted use case, and we can keep our software lean, right? So that might just be the way to go. But also, if you look at future development of your products and software, it's like I said, it's really difficult. But you sometimes have to kind of make concessions in designing certain aspects. So you realize that you cannot put everything in, and you also cannot put everything exactly verbatim the same way as your customer A, B, or C might have expressed it. So you have to kind of find an abstraction that solves the need of the customer but works for everyone else as well. So I think it's always a mixture between like listening and incorporating feedback, but while at the same time also being opinionated about it, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. And you mentioned you're not chasing titles. Previously, you have been in senior positions, manager, head of product research, and now you're back to IC and professor. Do you have any preference? Say, do you miss leading a team, have more powers in decision making, or it was your lifestyle choice that you want to be an individual contributor, freelance?
Right. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, that's a good question as well. I think that's something that's certainly not static at all. Right. So I think it evolves with different phases in my life. So what I'm doing right now is certainly to some extent like a lifestyle choice as well. Right. So working remotely is basically an artifact that I don't always think is the best thing for me. It's certainly better sometimes to have people to talk to on a daily basis, meet up in like a kitchen and just have a coffee or something like that. And certainly the time zone thing is making things more difficult, but it's actually like a decision I made for my family, right? So we have small kids. This is very private, of course, but like as long as the kids are small, I want to be very, very flexible. What happens after? I don't know. Kind of depends on what I want to do next, right? I think at some point certainly it's time to build a company myself. But I think that still has time, right? I think I'm still in a place where I want to soak up a lot of things and kind of move around freely. Like I always feel like the best role for me is kind of a bit of a free radical, right? So like if you just let me roam and pick up important things or urgent things in your company, that usually tends to work out pretty well. Right, and when it comes to kind of titles and all of that, of course, like you mentioned, I took up this professorship like 2.5 years ago. But basically, for me, this is not kind of a it's not a decision about the title. Of course, it allows me to teach, but that's because I love teaching, right? So I want to give back to the community. Like it has always been that for me. If it wouldn't come with the title, I would still do it, right? Maybe in a different role, but so because sometimes I feel like I have to justify that statement, right? I mean, you're a professor, so like how can you say you're not chasing titles, right? It sounds kind of odd, but at the same time, in my industry practice, I think it's becoming quite clear that I don't really care about the title as such. I'm really more interested in the responsibility behind what I'm doing, right? And basically the kind of the core idea is that competence and knowledge kind of attracts successful projects, right? So I try to put myself in a position where I don't need to be back to do something. So I just want to be useful and useful enough as a co-worker, basically, to have interesting things to say, be in the right meetings in the right room, and people want to ask me about my opinion, right? And this is for me a better definition of influence than just having a title on paper, right? So, and of course, like this whole.
Sorry. Oh, I was going to say, I think it sounds like you are more kind of results driven, mission driven, and also you're focusing on learning compared to having a title, having some authority assigned by a company or something.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, and and then I would say like my work at any scale. If you want to put like the right job role around it, I think I would actually call it a product engineer, right?
Okay.
So, and this is kind of, it's not a completely new idea, and I think there's just lots of large companies who have that. Basically, don't be like a pure engineer who's only focused on coding, but also kind of reach out to business and connect the dots, basically. And like I said earlier, to me, that's basically equivalent to a very technical data scientist. So basically, kind of the silver line is that I've been doing pretty much kind of the same thing for years, maybe like a decade, in different companies with different kind of priorities. But I tend to kind of move back and forth, right? And so, I think the whole idea behind that is, apart from just experiencing stuff that I like and don't like, is to be good at different things as well, right? So I think if you're like a junior data scientist or a junior engineer, so like some of the questions I get most when I mentor people is like how do I gain influence and how do I gain job security, right? And I think I already kind of tackled the influence part, right? If you're knowledgeable and you can do stuff and you have a track record of doing stuff, like the good work will come to you, basically. And then when it comes to job security, it's a similar picture, right? Either you go down like a very specialist path and you try to become like the best engineer in the world or something like that, right? Or you do something else, right? And like what I try to do is basically be like a really solid data scientist, a really solid engineer, And I don't know, I'm also kind of a good technical writer, right? So I
Yeah.
have these books, and I have a lot of interest in a lot of domains. And so basically, in the intersection of that, something interesting always happens, right? I think that goes actually back to what's his name again? Douglas Adams, right? The creator of the Dilbert comics. I don't know if you know him
Oh, yeah.
and his. Yeah, basically, this is basically his principle. He says he's maybe in the top 20% of drawing comics, but he's not excellent in it. And he's like in the top 20% of understanding business, but he's not great at it. And he's also in the top 20% of I don't know, humor, right? So it's not super funny what he writes, but like the intersection of all of that makes him kind of unique, right? So he has this kind of a niche. And I always found that to be very exciting to have like a lot of touch points with different domains, and being able to talk to a lot of people and have common ground, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think this is very inspiring for data scientists, because I believe we all have those type of intersections. Maybe you're interested in, I don't know, food science or healthcare. You can find data science companies or
Mm-hmm.
projects in that domain. I think when we started our career, a lot of times we are trying to fit in a specific role defined by a company, but you don't have to define your career just by your job title. Um, Even with your team, of course, on the condition that you do your current work well. If you think your coworkers' project are interesting, or if you're interested in a product role, engineering role, you can be helpful,
Mm-hmm.
collaborate with them, and that's how you learn and develop. And also, it helps for you to learn more about ourselves. You discovered you're not interested in continue your career in banking and insurance, and then um, you step into other industries and domains, and encourage you to think creatively about your career and your life. How can you integrate those two together?
Mm-hmm.
And you always do a lot of things. You write a book. Um, do engineering. You talk to customer. Work on products. I'm sure there's also a lot of things you are learning. So how do you optimize your productivity?
Ah, interesting. So that's an entirely different route now. Yeah, cool. I'm not sure. Like this is a difficult one. Like I'm not sure if I really optimize anything. Like I'm not one of these kind of optimize your life and kind of people. I don't really like that as such. But I do know that I'm comparatively organized. Let's say, right. So I think I try to come up with kind of good plans for the week and my day. So I pretty much start out my days in kind of the same way, like by just planning ahead and seeing what's up and what important things I have to tackle, right? And so one principle I've been following for years is basically I do kind of the most important or urgent or necessary thing in the morning, right? Which is sometimes also kind of the hardest thing to do. Not necessarily hardest as in engineering challenge or mathematical or something like that, but maybe psychologically challenging, right? Because you don't want to do it or something like that. And
Yeah.
basically, if you get that out of the way first thing in the morning, it's kind of already like a win, if you will, right? So I don't want to sound too motivational speaker like, but yeah, I think there's some truth to that. Like starting, you're working, doing the hard work in the morning. Basically, is something I certainly do when you want to know about optimization. And then of course there's that's kind of tactical things. And I feel like once you're okay with what you're doing and your current trajectory, a lot of things can actually be boiled down to tactics and having good habits, so to speak, right? And just having like a productive work environment. Like, yeah, for instance, I mean, one thing that makes me instantly more productive is I get all of the Slack team messages, emails, everything out of the way first thing in the morning. And then basically San Francisco sleeps, right? So I have like 8 hours of full focus
Oh,
time.
uninterrupted time. That's awesome.
Yeah. So yeah. So I mean, it has kind of drawbacks, very
Mhm.
obvious ones, but basically between checking all my messages and answering in the morning, which takes a considerable amount of time, I can tell you. So because I basically have like three emails, like my private one, the uni one, and Anyscale. I have two messengers, right? Slack for Anyscale and Teams for uni, for communication with students. And so there's a lot of stuff to catch up in the morning. But once I have this done, I close everything and just do my thing, right?
Mhm.
And I feel like that already makes me more productive, let's say, than many other folks who have like constant interruptions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Sometime during the day, I want to have some deep work time. I'll turn off those notifications. But in back of my head, always anxious. Oh, what if someone's looking for me, or I got an important email? So maybe that's why sometimes living on the West Coast, although I have the same working hour with everyone else, sometimes I find myself more productive in the evening because nobody's like
Interesting.
messaging me, and I can finally get something done. And yeah, previously when I was on certain teams, sometimes we have a lot of customer meetings. You just feel you're in meetings all day, and you can only get some work done later in the afternoon or in the evening. I don't know if there's I think good way to solve this. Something I experimented is tell people, hey, I'm going to do some focus work in the morning. I might not check emails. And then a lot of people get online around 10, 11. So maybe I can get something done, between 8 to 10. But I don't win kind of my day always. I feel there's always something unexpected happen. I feel like sometimes if I have 2, 3 days, I feel productive. That's pretty good. I'm curious about you. Like you have small kids, and maybe say some evening you didn't sleep well, or something at the university you need to pay attention to. For those days when you don't feel you're very productive, what do you do?
Well, I think the short answer is mostly I just take half a day off.
Mm.
And this is something I established like a couple of years ago. Basically, whenever something doesn't quite work out, or I didn't have enough sleep or something like that, I take a nap,
Yeah.
or I take a day off, or like I don't
Yeah.
know, just go outside and spend some time in nature.
Mm.
And I mean, as a freelancer, it's easier to pull off if you don't have like that many deadlines. That said, I should mention that I really see myself as an employee of Anyscale, and Anyscale sees it the same way. But
Yeah.
contractually, I'm freelancer, right? But the that makes it easier because if I work less, I charge less, basically, right?
Mm.
So that's kind of the deal you have in a more free interaction, and freedom is really important to me. And I noticed a couple of years back that it's pretty much the best thing I can do. Basically, just take off, relax. The more relaxed you can be, the better you are as a productive member of a team. And
Yeah.
so, but of course, it's again like a difficult balance to strike, because sometimes you're just not feeling it, and then if I would take like a day off every time I'm not feeling it, I wouldn't get any work done. So this is not something I do regularly or so, but I still feel like it's more productive to be out for like a morning or an afternoon, and then come back energized the next day, than spending like a week off or something like that, right?
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I think
but of
what I
course,
learned.
of course, I know this is more difficult in a classic office setting, right? You cannot just decide not to come in today, which is unfortunate. But maybe you should just call in sick, and choose this one day as kind of a self-care day, something like that. It would be better. I know it's not very popular, but I think it's actually like a good idea.
Yeah, I agree. I think on the days you don't feel like doing things, you sometimes need to push yourself, or doing something or do something very small to get started. But if your body doesn't feel great, I don't think there's a need. You have to push for it. Like you mentioned, sometimes you need to listen to your your body and then take a break when it's needed. I think that's important, especially with remote work. Sometimes it's hard for people to separate work and life. I think
Right.
especially during the pandemic, people all work more than before, and company observed higher productivity. So for you, you started remote work in 2016, way before the pandemic.
Mhm.
What was your experience of that? Like, for example, how do you separate work and life, and how do you that's one question. Another one is, how do you create some opportunities to have those type of, quote unquote kitchen conversation with your coworker, have those type of connection beyond work relationship?
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, cool. So, yeah, first of all, I have to mention that basically back in 2016, that deal that I struck with the US basically was super cool, right? I mean, like this was just nobody in my vicinity was having something like that. So that was kind of really cool. And I jokingly say sometimes that like the pandemic brought that to everyone, and I had to fight for it, basically. So, but the point is basically now it's more normalized to do this kind of remote work, which is actually a kind of a net positive. But of course, it comes with kind of its drawbacks, right? Like you said, these kind of tea kitchen meetings also are not really happening. So basically, what I do is I try to set aside, and sometimes even put this in my calendar to reach out to a couple of people in Slack at least, right? I mean, it can be perceived as a nuisance to them, maybe like maybe I'm interrupting their day. They're not. I mean, they're not forced to talk to me immediately, but I just want to keep in touch a little bit, right? It's not something that I plan, like I have to reach out to three people like that, but just to be a bit more social. So sometimes I would initiate a certain conversation. It's not a perfect proxy, but it works for the most part, right? And it could be better, but then again, like there's only so much you can do. I mean, I enjoy so much so many liberties basically that are good for me that I can accept certain drawbacks, right? And one of these drawbacks is the late night meetings, basically, right? So right now it's what is it? Almost 7 p.m. for me, right? Which is basically kind of the time of day in which my meetings start, right? So I usually have like between 6 and 10 p.m. I have my meetings like almost every evening, right? And so this is something I have to accept, and it's not always easy to deal with that on like a work life balance perspective. Yeah, you mentioned that in the pandemic, people tended to work more. Like I'm no stranger to working a lot, so that's okay for me. But yeah, sometimes it's difficult to take out the time, right? So usually today was an exception, but usually between 5 and 7, I spend time with family and just be with my kids basically, and so that's kind of a time I reserve, and after that I go back into meetings and such, right? Yeah. Did I answer your questions? Like you had
Yeah.
two. I'm not sure if I touched on both.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I think you answered my questions. And yeah, like previously you mentioned you're not uh, chasing a title. I guess now you're kind of freelancing. There's not much of a title, but previously, I'm curious, has there been any cases you suggest to your manager you want to have a promotion, go to a different level, or ask for a raise? Have you had those conversations before?
Um, Not really, to be honest. Like, it has been like a while ago. Like, I think the first time around when I headed into this head of data science position, that came with like a negotiation, and basically at that point I was able to prove to myself that I can do these kind of negotiations. I would actually claim I'm kind of good at this, technically speaking. Um, and so I know I can do it, but mostly I was never really forced into difficult discussions like that as much in recent years, because pretty much from 2016 on, I was in the lucky position to being offered really attractive stuff again and again, right? So I basically jumped into the next role, which came with, I don't know, more money if you want it, or more, I don't know, responsibility or something like that, with or without the title, right? And so that has never been anything that I'm really thinking about, right? So I think this is something, I hope it stays like that, right? But of course, I have a certain standing in the community with the books and the GitHub projects and the GitHub profile in general, which makes me usually known to some Pythonistas at least, right? And so that often gives me kind of opportunities to jump into roles that would otherwise be difficult to be had, right? And so I haven't really been updating my CV since, I don't know, 5 years or so. Like, usually stuff comes around on GitHub or Twitter, right? And so, right. But in principle, yes, I know what your question is aiming at, right? I mean, there are this kind of difficult discussions that you have to have, even at Passmind or any scale. Of course, people want to know, how do you want to develop, right, over the next years? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? All of these questions, right? And so basically, at some point, you kind of will be forced into conversations like that. But for me, basically, my personal freedom and my development are more important than focusing on that, right? I choose not to focus on that. So basically, I just want to make sure that I expand my knowledge in certain degrees. Like right now, I think I told you this before we started the recording, but so basically, I'm right now on any scale, I'm focusing very much on improving and polishing APIs and understanding our documentation from a technical perspective, and information architecture. How do we communicate stuff like in the book, right? So how do we get better at this? And these kind of things like design, software design, and basically information management, content creation, stuff like that, technical documentation, are very, very, very adjacent to the fields of engineering and data science. But I basically chose to do that right now because it kind of, in my mind, completes and rounds up my profile, right? Because I have a very good understanding of our documentation build system, for instance, right? So that's extremely valuable, and I didn't know that before, and now I do, right? So it's kind of these things that drive me, and I know that like the knowledge that I accumulate right now will be useful in the future as well, right? Yeah. So.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And for folks who are interested in a similar path, be say freelance data scientist or software engineer, want to also has this their own personal brand built, what's your advice to them? Do you feel they can copy a similar path?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, of course. I mean, first of all, everybody has to basically find their own path, but I think it's certainly valuable to build a good GitHub portfolio, right? Mm-hmm. So this is something I think a lot of people should do more, right? So for engineers, that has been something that they did for a long time. And on purpose, right? And it kind of replaces your CV in many places. But depending on how you look at it, I think that becomes more and more true for many data science roles as well, right? And so this is certainly something I would recommend if you're inclined to do something like that, right? And that being said, like not everything on GitHub is just something that attracts software engineers. Of course, like all the interesting things are happening there, right? So if you're someone who's mostly familiar with environments such as Jupyter Notebooks, or you want to share your knowledge through a blog or something like that, that can be open source as well, right? As long as you work in the open and share stuff, then you're kind of golden, right? So for instance, for me, I'm not the kind of guy that would create a YouTube channel. I think it's not a good idea, right? So personally, I like this conversation here, but like I'm not kind of the most charismatic and spontaneous person in the world, right? So I think I think we can kind of agree on that, but that's okay. But I think I'm more effective in communicating my ideas in written form, for instance, right? And so for me, having a GitHub project, a GitHub portfolio is kind of makes sense. But for someone else, blogging might be a much better idea, or like creating a channel or a podcast like you, right? So that can be something you can copy, so to speak, right? Right, and I think like kind of building your personal brand, as overused as that is in recent years, I think there's a certain truth to that, right? So basically, choose kind of a medium that feels natural to you, and in which you can have kind of develop a voice that doesn't sound, I don't know, tacky, and as if you want to build like a network, but really, build something and share, like whatever you build and whatever you want to share, and then basically good things will happen, right? Anyway, but that's just the outward facing stuff. But of course, you still have to kind of invest a lot in learning as well, right? I think that's important too, right? Not just focus on all the social media stuff, but also pick up a book here and there and really try to improve your skills over the years.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I agree with you. A lot of people ask me, should I write on LinkedIn? Should I write on Medium? My advice is exactly the same. Pick one that feels natural for you. There's no, the optimal solution for your building a I don't know, public profile.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't know what to write, just don't think about being appealing to a lot of people. Just think about a problem you're interested in, write for yourself. Or I'm sure there are some people ask you some questions, write as answer to them. That's how I started writing online, creating data science projects, solve that I want to solve, give advice that I wish I wanted to hear, say 5 years ago. So yeah, thanks for sharing your perspective. And now looking back at your career, what are some mistakes you have made?
Oh, I did a lot of mistakes. You could argue that I only did mistakes, like like I mentioned in the beginning, like the way I tend to learn, and I know not everybody is like that, right? But like for me, it's very difficult to really say what the right thing for me is without having experienced it, right? So like data science sounds cool on paper to me, but if I've never done it, how can I really judge if this is something for me that I want to do for years on end, right? And so I don't really understand people who are wired differently there. Like to me, like the only way I can find out how things work is to really dive in and just do that, right? So basically, the whole idea is to go in and to collect experience and make mistakes, right? So, for instance, in the early stages of my career, like when I was head of data science at Liquid Labs, where we also built quite interesting reinforcement learning things. That was a time in my life when I truly didn't want to be a manager, but basically I just got bubbled up and moved into this position. But in hindsight, I mean, it was clear to me that this was not the right time. I think I can do it. I may not be exactly super talented at it, right? Like the people management part. But I mean, I could do it. It was just not the right move at the right time, right? And so basically, I can look back and take this experience, take it with me, and kind of reflect on it. And I know what kind of the drawbacks are. Like should I want to step up? So like some days I wake up and I feel like, man, I should just ask guy A to give me to make me kind of the lead of this group or something like that at any scale or so. Yeah, it happens, and then basically I can think back and say, all right, okay, that would mean this and this and that, and I would have so many more one-on-one meetings, and like I did all these kind of decisions, and yeah, at the time it was kind of a mistake. Well, and another big mistake I did for sure was at one point I was very obsessed, and I know this is very common in kind of these tech bro circles that I'm in. Basically, kind of chasing the big stuff and working for a company that is kind of hyper growth or like explodes and stock options here and big money there. Like so. I think at one point in my career, like I was really focused on kind of picking out kind of these potential companies that have this kind of high risk, high reward scenarios going on, but was pretty much at the time when my kids were born, right? And so that this is an absolutely stupid idea. I think like I shouldn't have done this at all, right? Basically, if you go into such a hostile environment, so to speak. I mean, not that every fast-growing company is hostile. That's not what I mean. But oftentimes it requires a lot of working hours, right? Yeah. If you can't put them in at that phase in your life, maybe you can just delay that, right? Or do it before you decide to have a family or something like that. Yeah. So those are kind of decisions that you have to make that should align with everything in your situation, right? So you certainly have to take this into account, and yeah, basically, kind of doing a decision against a company that would be better for you just for the prospect of maybe in a couple of years having stock that's worth something is something I don't subscribe to anymore. Like it's like I think it's cool to have, like if you have that as a bonus on top,
yeah,
all the better. That's fine. But this is not something I would base any decisions on, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And well, what is the important feedback you got from could be your manager or people you work with?
Right. So I think that is kind of in the same vein to what I just said, like in the same phase. I think I was a bit kind of white knuckling sometimes, like very tense and ambitious, basically, and oftentimes it's kind of better to let go, like comes back to the discussion we had about taking half a day off or something like that, right? So I think like I'm better if I'm more relaxed, so to speak. Yeah, and it doesn't always happen naturally. Yeah, but this is something I got as feedback a lot. Like especially in remote situations, I come a bit. I come across a bit as I don't know, like strong, let's say, right? I mean, I'm German as well. Maybe that adds to it. But like of course, like people are at different scales on kind of their disagreeableness, let's say, right? And of course, like if you have certain discussions, I tend to have stronger opinions sometimes. And I learned over the years. Hopefully, like somebody should give me feedback on that again. But I learned to kind of tone down these kind of aggressive notes, to be more productive in the end.
Yeah. Do you think it's a culture difference? You feel in the US people kind of sugarcoat their disagreement more?
True. Yeah. I think there's even differences between the West Coast and the East Coast, right? Mm-hmm. But it's interesting. It's definitely true, and I see like we have a lot of different cultural circles at any scale and at uni as well. It's always different. It's always very interesting to see how people package their messages differently and how they mean certain things, right? So like in sometimes it's like I come from the cultural circles where being more open and frank about your message is is kind of
Yeah.
appreciated, right? So if you sugarcoat things too much to an extent where you don't even you almost don't see like the message itself, because like
Yeah.
you have to have so much cultural nuance to even get the point. Then it's kind of too much. It's also sometimes unfair, right? Because like if you're just not from this cultural circle, I think it's a good advice to be more culturally neutral, so to speak, in your feedback and your communication style, right? Because otherwise people might heavily misunderstand you. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I think even if it comes from a good intention, wants to help move the project forward or help other people grow, but it if it's hard for other person to perceive, then it's counterproductive. Yeah, I think we all work in a very diverse environment, and it's important to at least be aware of that. Yeah.
Right.
So
Yeah.
now, so what is something you're excited about in your career or in your life?
So I'm really excited to have this book published finally, to be
Yeah.
honest. Yeah. So and I'm really happy to be free to basically choose something else or choose to do nothing at all as a replacement, right? And so yeah, no, that's really cool. I think this life cycle of a book project is really interesting. Like you always start out really excited, and towards the end you lose a bit of steam. At least I do. And then once the book is out, it's kind of a relief. So yeah, it's really good to hold it in my hands and to see the physical copies come in, right? And so in the next couple of weeks, I have a couple of speaking appointments, right? A couple of meetups locally. Actually locally, like with people, seeing people, which in the pandemic was kind of inconceivable. And so
Right.
I'm really looking forward to that as well. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I think I previously downloaded the PDF version of the book. Can people still find it on the website?
Yeah, they can. Yeah, I think it's available on Amazon, and it should be in bookstores by now, at least in the US, and also on O'Reilly. You can download it directly, and I think Anyscale is also sponsoring the book. So like if you go onto the Anyscale website, you should also be able to get it.
Okay, cool. And now, with say the launch of GPT-4 and you're working on distributed training, what do you think about the future of machine learning?
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, there's different points of views to be had, right? So like it's not by accident that OpenAI used Ray to train their models. Yeah, but so these foundational models and derivations thereof are super tricky and large and difficult to train, and need the right amount of data and a lot of compute. And you see these pictures of scaling laws. More data plus more compute equals better, basically. So that's certainly something I think we will continue to see, right? And this is certainly also something that this whole hypothesis of needing to scale and needing cluster computing is something that Ray and Anyscale bank on. And I kind of subscribe to that idea, right? Like even if you're not a super big shop, like OpenAI or Uber or something like that, you still might have use cases where it's just quicker, faster, or cheaper to scale out computation, right? Because, for instance, you can iterate faster, right? Which makes your data science better, because you can run more experiments in a day. And improve towards the needs of your customers, something like that, right? So I certainly do believe that like scalability has its role there, right? And having seamless scale out of experiments on a variety of hardware is something that is certainly here to stay. And then at the same time, I'm also kind of excited about these new waves of products like Alpaca, LoRa, and stuff like that, where people basically take these big models and have like a much smaller version that you can run and train on your laptop for a couple of $100s, right? And of course, like hardware will become faster and cheaper, even though like Moore's law might not hold anymore in the same way. But still very, very interesting to see how open source equivalents and models of that new generation will kind of make it into the public. Like I'm pretty sure that like this year, later this year, even maybe in a couple of weeks, we will have open source versions either leaked or trained by some organization that are equally powerful. So like this kind of democratization process is definitely happening. So I find it very hard to believe that, for instance, OpenAI can keep everything like a secret, right? And so that's quite interesting to see. I'm really looking forward to all of that, right? Because I personally, and I would also be curious to hear what you do, but I use these GPT-like models like on a daily basis for months now, right? So like I don't want to live without without Copilot anymore, right? So that is basically something I code with, and if somebody would take this away from me, I wouldn't like it very much, So I'm not sure if you do anything like that. Like with the book writing, it helped us as well, right?
Yeah. I also use Copilot, and if I need to summarize some podcast scripts or I want to summarize some blog posts I wrote before, I use ChatGPT, and especially when I want to generate some titles, I asked ChatGPT to give me 10 ideas. I haven't used it in very complicated project. For example, I haven't asked it to generate code and create an application. But if I have time, I definitely want to try that.
All right. Yeah, cool. So yeah, I think it's definitely recommended, right? So Copilot for technical stuff, and then ChatGPT for all the more higher level idea stuff, and then also setting up projects is really cool. Like for instance, like of course my strengths are around Python and its ecosystem, but sometimes especially with my documentation work, I'm basically sometimes forced basically to do HTML, CSS, JavaScript, or something like that, which I know well enough to understand what comes out of ChatGPT. But it's still cool to have like a helper to assist you, like a junior developer to your side that you can use to amplify your work. So that's pretty awesome, actually.
Yeah. So with this type of help, it's like you have a junior developer on the side or junior data scientist. And if you are junior in your career, how can you make myself more irreplaceable?
Yeah. So I mean, sure. There's different ways to make you irreplaceable, right? I think we just discussed this earlier, but like one way is to be extremely specialized in something, and another way is to just have a good overview or like good taste in something, right? And I think with ChatGPT and Copilot and stuff like that, it becomes ever more clear that basically like these small little implementation details, this is something you can just hand off, but moving into the right direction and doing the thing right, kind of the on the level of strategy and prioritization, those are the things you actually have to learn as like a senior developer, right? And data scientist as well. So you have to ask the right questions. And I think might be difficult right now, but I'm not sure if you could really cook up like a strong curriculum for data scientists based on ChatGPT. For instance, I've been using ChatGPT for language learning, which is actually fantastic. You can kind of have like a prompt and ask it to be like your teacher. And it works fantastically well. I mean, it's absolutely fantastic. But for data science, I don't know. But it's really it can be a strong conversational partner, right? Where you can test certain ideas against it, even as a junior, and you might just gain some experience on the fly because you throw ideas out there and you see that they don't work, right? Which might take you much longer if you were waiting for actual feedback, so to speak, yeah, from a human operator. And
Yeah.
so I think it's certainly possible to learn a lot from that, right? And also I know a lot of people who don't who have difficulties basically with the kind of the classical learning path, right? So there's a couple of the best developers I know struggled at school and don't really read books as much. Like they pick up a book to take something from it, but had they had like a conversational tool to solve their problems right now, I mean that's the best thing for them, right? And so I think if you're this type of learner, right, someone who just learns through talking and implementing things, then this can be an amazing tool to further your career.
Yeah, yeah. I think I'm that type of learner. It was very hard for me to sit in the classroom and listen and take notes.
Mm-hmm.
I learned through doing projects. So I might take that on. Before we wrap up, you previously mentioned, I think maybe when your kids grow older, you might have a different type of career or life, and you want to maybe start your own company someday. What do you think about your career and maybe life in the future?
I think it's very interesting to me that I don't know yet, right? So I think that's part of the magic. I honestly don't know. Like sometimes I claim that I want to be a carpenter or a farmer in 5 years, and so maybe I do that. Not sure, but I mean, to be honest, like it's very unlikely. I might just continue doing something in tech, but yeah, I think like it's certainly something on my checklist, so to speak, to when I'm more free, like on a personal level, right? And the kids, for instance, don't need me as much anymore. Then I gained so much experience to build something myself. Unless AI is so great that we're all obsolete on the job market, but then it's basically time to do my own thing. Yeah, I think, and yeah. So I think there's this kind of this myth about, and we cannot statistically prove that. I think it's actually wrong, right? So there might be good examples, but most successful founders are actually older, right? And so like there might be these kid geniuses who drop out of Harvard and build the next Facebook or something like that. That's cool. But I think most successful founders have substantial experience, right? And so for me, that's something I really look forward to. I don't know yet in what domain precisely, but yeah, I'm pretty sure that there will be something interesting to work on.
Yeah, I'm sure with your experience in data science, engineering, and product, open source, you will be a great startup founder, and I'm excited to see your future steps. Thank
Fingers
you so
crossed.
much.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Max and Professor Pompella, for coming to the Data Scientist Show. I learned a lot from our conversation.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks so much for having me. It was fun.
Yeah, and for folks who want to follow you on social media or read your book, GitHub, where can they find you?
Yeah, I think like GitHub, maybe Twitter or LinkedIn would be places to find me. But yeah, I like my activity on social media is kind of comes in spurts. So sometimes I feel like it, but I mean most reliably I can be found on GitHub. I basically live there, if you will. Okay. Yeah, sure.
Awesome. Thank you.
Cool. Yeah. Thanks so much.